After another week hiatus, we are back once again, and we are kicking off March the most action-packed way possible, because at the channel point's request of Quaid, today we're going to review John Wick, which was released in 2014. So John Wick is a neo-noir action thriller film directed by Chad Stahelski. Very interesting fun fact about Chad Stahelski, he was one of the stunt doubles for Brandon Lee on The Crow, and one of the two people, along with Jeff Condenti, who were tasked to stand in after Lee was murdered accidentally on set, and also coincidentally will be covering The Crow in about 2 weeks. The film starred Keanu Reeves, who made a triumphant return to stardom after having much of a career setback throughout the 2000s. In addition, the film also starred Michael Nyqvist, Alfie Allen, Adrian Palicki, Bridget Mollahan, Dean Winters, Ian McShane, and Willem Dafoe. The film centers around a man named, of course, John Wick, a former assassin who's dealing with the death of his wife. Wick tries to get his life back together, but after the last things he has left are taken from him, he resorts back to his old ways and plans revenge. The film was met with positive reviews from critics who labeled it one of, if not Keanu Reeves' best ever performance. It had a budget somewhere in between 20 and 30 million and made 86 million at the box office. It has also now turned into a franchise with currently 2 sequels and a 3rd sequel due to be released in about a year's time. We'll talk about it more later, but I gotta say before we start, this film was such a beautiful combination of so many things. It was part anime somehow, part martial art film, part Hong Kong action film, part spaghetti western, part French action, part gun fu. Like, it had it all, it really did. And while the action was awesome, it wasn't just the action, the story was great too. But did the story end with Wick getting his revenge? Well, we're gonna find out right now as we take a look back at John Wick, released in 2014. So our film begins with an incredibly bloody John Wick stumbling out of a car. He takes his phone out and watches a video of him and his wife from the beach before seemingly dying. We then flash back a little bit in time as John Wick wakes up at 6 a.m. having flashbacks of his own to his wife who recently passed from terminal illness. And by recently, I mean just a few days ago as he goes out to attend her funeral. An old friend of his, Marcus, also shows up to the funeral to see if he's doing alright. Later that night at home, he gets a package. It's a puppy. But it's not just any puppy, it comes with a letter from his late wife, Helen, telling him that this is how he should cope with his grief. The next day, John begins to bond with the puppy and even takes it out on a drive in his '69 Ford Mustang. While they're getting gas, a group of Russian gangsters pull up to get gas themselves, led by a man named Yosef. Yosef takes interest in his car and offers to buy it from him, but John says it's not for sale. Later that night, John hears his dog, which he's named Daisy, barking, and when he goes downstairs to see what's going on, he's jumped by Yosef and the gangsters. Yosef and friends beat the shit out of John before killing Daisy with a pipe shot to the head. They then steal his car and John wakes up the next day distraught and buries Daisy in the backyard. And in addition to being distraught, he's also fucking pissed. Yosef takes the stolen car to a man named Arello to have the papers changed, but Arello recognizes it and punches him in the face. Turns out because Arello is a friend of John, who gives him Yosef's full name, Yosef Tarasov, son of Vigo Tarasov, the head of the Russian mafia. Later that night, Vigo calls Arello and asks him why he hid his son, and when Arello tells him why, Vigo fully understands. And then somewhat ironically, Vigo himself proceeds to hit his son. Vigo then explains to Yosef as well as his lawyer Avi the implications of who the fuck John Wick really is, while meanwhile, John Wick digs up his guns. And to sum up the conversation, John Wick once killed 3 men with a pencil, and Yosef is fucked. Vigo then calls John to try to maybe make nice, but John isn't really interested in talking. Vigo then instructs Avi to send every man he has to try to take Wick out. John then loads his guns and dresses in his old black suit, while masked men surround his house. And then comes what is maybe my favorite sequence in the movie, and maybe one of the best action sequences I've ever seen. John Wick just flawlessly executes all 15 of these guys throughout his house. Like, he just murks one after the other, after the other, after the other. If you didn't know what I meant about, so when I said gun fu, watch this scene and you'll get what I mean. After this is over, a cop named Jimmy shows up to investigate the noise, but Jimmy seems to know what John is all about and wisely leaves it be. John then calls an old friend Charlie, who's a cleaner, and he and his friends dispose of the bodies. Vigo then puts a hit out on John for $2 million, and he knows just the man to execute it, John's old friend Marcus, who agrees. John meanwhile checks into the New York Continental Hotel, which caters to the criminal underworld. And in the lobby he meets a former acquaintance named Miss Perkins, never given a first name. John then goes to the hotel's underground bar and meets the manager Winston, who informs him that Vigo has Yosef holed up at the Red Circle, his nightclub. John then sees a couple of Yosef's friends entering the Red Circle through a back way, bodyguarded by a man named Francis, who's played by legendary wrestler Kevin Nash. After John convinces Francis to take the night off, he enters the back room and kills Yosef's friends. And in another great scene, he silently moves throughout the nightclub and takes out Yosef's security. However, one of the bodyguards is able to tackle John out into the open, and Yosef sees him, so John proceeds to chase Yosef throughout the nightclub while killing multiple people. John continues to remain untouched until he finally comes face to face with Krill, Vigo's head lieutenant, who definitely touches him up a bit. While Yosef escapes outside in a car, John and Krill engage in hand-to-hand combat, which Krill wins after he throws John off a balcony. John retreats to the hotel and has his wounds tended by a doctor who gives him some pills for the pain. As John lays down to rest, unbeknownst to him, Marcus is setting up his sniper rifle right outside his window. But double unbeknownst to him, Miss Perkins has also entered his room from behind. Marcus fires a shot next to John to warn him, and then John engages in combat with Miss Perkins. John ends up winning this fight, and after seeing this, Marcus retreats. While Perkins is obviously working for Vigo, and under the threat of death, she reveals the location of Vigo's front where he keeps all his money, a church. John then leaves a fellow assassin named Harry to deal with Perkins while he heads to the church. John shoots down some of Vigo's henchmen and shoots the fake bishop in the leg before getting a hold of Vigo's money and burning it all. Meanwhile, Perkins gets the best of Harry and escapes and shoots him right in the head. Vigo shows up, obviously pissed about his money, and has the fake bishop executed. He's then ambushed by John, and he takes out almost all of Vigo's men except for Krill, who runs him over with a car and knocks him out. And in probably the most illogical part of this whole movie, instead of just shooting John in the head right there when he's unconscious and that being it, they tie him to a chair and bring him to a warehouse so Vigo can monologue at him. Vigo then taunts John about his wife's death and tells him he's a fool for thinking he'd ever be able to escape his old life. After Vigo leaves, Krill and another henchman attempt to strangle John to death. Will that other henchman ever get a name? No, but he will get a bullet in the head courtesy of Marcus. John then once again engages in combat with Krill, and this time he wins, choking him unconscious and breaking his neck with his handcuffs. And after John frees himself, he's able to stop Vigo's car before he can get away, and threatens Vigo with his life, telling him he needs to give up his son. And while Vigo loves his son, he's like, nah, I love myself more, and he gives up his son's location, and John lets him go free. Time for another flawless victory by John, and this one is completely flawless. He finds the warehouse where Yosef is staying, and just easily murders everybody before accosting Yosef and shooting him in the head. Job done. John then checks out of the hotel and meets up with Marcus by a bridge, unbeknownst to them, while they're being watched by Miss Perkins. Marcus then returns home to see Vigo and his henchmen waiting for him. Vigo then executes Marcus and calls John to tell him this to bait him to the house. The plan is for Perkins to ambush John, but before she can do that, she receives a call from Winston. She goes to the meeting, and Winston tells her that her membership has been revoked, and she's promptly executed. I was back and forth on this scene, by the way, because I thought maybe she'd have a bigger role towards the end, but at the same time, this was really shown, or really used to show just how real the hotel is, and I think they did a very good job of it. John, once again pissed, ambushes Vigo and company as they're trying to get on a helicopter and get out of there. John then executes everybody, including Avi, before Vigo almost pushes him off a cliff. John and Vigo finally stand off, and Vigo baits them into hand-to-hand combat, which goes about as well for Vigo as you would think. That is until, like a pussy, Vigo pulls out a knife. And then John uses Vigo's knife to stab himself so that he can break Vigo's arm, which is a fucking baller move. John finally fatally wounds Vigo by stabbing him in the neck and they both fall over. John then gets up and after saying his goodbyes, leaves Vigo to die. We're then back at our scene from the beginning of the movie with John hunched over seemingly dead, but he's not. He decides to get up after hearing his wife's voice on the phone saying, "John, let's go home." He breaks into the building, which is some sort of pound, and uses the animal supplies to tend to his wounds. He then sees a pit bull, which is scheduled to be euthanized the next day. So naturally, he steals it, and him and the pit bull walk down his wife's favorite pier to end the film. So honestly, the only complaints I have with this film are the two things I already mentioned. Vigo's a fucking idiot for taking him to a warehouse instead of, just ending him and that being it. You just had to monologue, didn't you? Classic movie villain shit. You just had to monologue, didn't you? And I would have liked to have seen, I'm not saying Perkins didn't get a big role. She did, and she was shown to be as almost equal strength to John. But I don't know, I feel like she could have been involved a little bit more in the end. But again, it was shown to show the strength of the hotel, and I'm sure that will come into play more in the sequels. As far as what I liked, well, pretty much everything else. The acting was great. Again, I do agree, I think this was Keanu Reeves' best performance. In terms of his individual performance, I actually think it was even better than The Matrix, to be honest with you. Like, I don't... Was this a better overall film than The Matrix? That's another debate. Maybe, maybe not. I'll have to rewatch The Matrix. But as far as his individual performance goes, I definitely think this was his best. And just the action sequences in this film, my god, like, there's some of the greatest action scenes I've ever seen. Like, that sequence where he's killing the guys at his house, it's flawless. His performance is flawless, and honestly, I like seeing the flawless victories. Like, I know sometimes there's gotta be scenes where it's like, oh, well, he has an equal and somebody comes back at him. And that did happen once at the end in the club scene. But other than that, it's just him fucking murking dudes. And it's awesome. Like, it's honestly awesome. Like, they build him up so well to his full power and then show him at his full power. They don't do the whole like, oh, he's not what he used to be. No, he's still what he was. And he's gonna fucking kill you. And honestly, this was my first watch of this movie. I had never seen this film before this, so thank you, Quaid, for using your points on this, because I'd always meant to see this, but I never actually had, and I'm glad I have now. So honestly, if you just want action, if you just want blood, you just want people dying, you just want motherfuckers killing people at breakneck speed, this is the perfect film for you. This is a quintessential action film. It is pure action. And spoiler alert, Quaid has already requested John Wick 2, so we'll be covering that pretty soon in the coming months. But that's going to do it for my look back at John Wick. Tremendous film. Loved it a lot. Again, I had always heard great things about it, people saying they loved it, never had actually seen it. I'm really glad I have, and I'm excited to see the sequels. But for the first film, that is going to do it for me today. Thank you guys for watching. If you liked the video, be sure to leave it a like. If you want to follow any of my social media links, they're all in the description down below. Thank you to all my patrons for supporting me and all my channels. I appreciate you guys. Thank you again to Quaid for using your points on this. With all that being said, though, my name is Noah Taff. This has been my review of John Wick, released in 2014, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye.